Hello everyone, in this Blender video tutorial we will be modeling a lightsaber. So let's begin by adding a background image. I've picked an image of several lightsabers, but for this tutorial we will only be modeling Luke Skywalker's saber. So let's move Luke's saber up to the middle of the scene like this, and add a cylinder with 24 vertices. Scale it down to about the correct size and move it down. Go into edit mode, make sure that this box is white, so we grab all of the vertices like this, move them up to this point. And let's put the background image on the front so we get a better idea of what's going on. Let's add a loop cut here. We'll begin by adding the 6 protrusions at the bottom of the hilt. So another loop cut here, another loop cut here. So grab 4 faces, insert, check individual for this, and dissolve into one face. We'll repeat this process 5 more times to get 6 faces. Like this. I forgot to insert. Okay, so now we've selected all 6 faces. And make sure to use individual origins as the pivot point and scale down those 6 faces like this. Use normal as the orientation and move them along their respective z-axis like this. And also scale them down to 0 along their individual z-axis like this. Now let's add the protrusion on the side here. So one loop cut here, another loop cut here. And grab 2 faces, extrude them here. Use global as transform orientation again, scale them to 0 along the y-axis, extrude again, and again. Add one loop cut here, another one here, and another one here. 2 small circle-shaped holes here, which we will add now. Like this, select individual. And add 2 subdivisions. Go into loop tools and pick a circle. Like this. Make sure you didn't get a bug like I got on my first try. A bit buggy sometimes when using loop tools. Select individual origins and scale these down. And we will delete those faces. Make sure this box is white, so we grab all the vertices that are behind the visible ones. Like this, and we'll create a bridge here. And another bridge here, like this. They're a little buggy, so I think we're gonna do them again. Tools, bridge, to twist it a bit like this so they're straight. Like this. Now let's delete those faces. Select those vertices, add a face here, select those, a face here, select those, a face here, and see we get this sort of intrusion into the protrusion if you want. Now we'll be adding several more loop cuts here, here, again, again. Like this, and then select faces. We'll select all of the faces that are made of a black material. And we will extrude and scale them down along the X and Y axes. So this. Alright. Let's pick a smooth shader for the cylinder. Increase the opacity. Oh, okay, so add another loop cut here. Another one here. Another one here. Like this. Select those faces. Extrude, scale along the X and Y axes. And for these faces too. Some more for these faces. Bring these down a bit. Extrude these. And extrude scale along the X and Y axes. Now we should pick these two like this, and only those, and another extrude and scale along the X and Y axes like this. So we're pretty much done here. Can apply the rotation and scale. And let's add a Bevel Modifier. Select angle and 2 segments. Like this. Now you can see that there are three materials in this object. So let's create three materials. The first one is a gray metal material, which looks a bit like maybe polished aluminum. So let's set the specular intensity to 1 and hardness to 25. There will be two textures for this material. Both will be image textures. The first one will be a metal texture. This one. Let's set the contrast to 1.5. Saturation to 0.6. Repeat the texture twice and check both mirrors. Pick generated as coordinates and cube as projection. The second texture will be used to create reflections into this material. So we will be grabbing an image of a kitchen, and all of these images will be available through a link in the video description, so you can access them and use them as you're doing this tutorial. So let's set the brightness to 0.8, contrast to 2. And saturation to 0. Repeat texture twice for X and Y. We'll use a reflection as a coordinate. And keep the projection flat. Now the second material is a round material, maybe brass or something. So we'll begin by copying the first material and pasting it so we get the same settings. Except the specular light will be brown, and we'll set diffuse intensity to 0.2 right away. So use HSV settings, Q 0.07, saturation 0.5, and value 1. And the hardness will also be 25. I'll also remove this texture and create a new one. We'll use the same image. Increase the red to 1.3 so we get an orange shade. Brightness to 0.8. Repeat twice. Flat reflection. And the last material is a sort of black plastic, so pretty easy to do. Like this, dark, almost completely black, and specular intensity to 1. Now we need to assign those materials to the corresponding faces. So the first material is the default one. You can see there are some faces here, which use the brass material, and some faces down here which use the black plastic material. Like this, a sign. Apply rotation and scale. Now let's add a laser to this saber. But first, let's rotate it so that it's horizontal, like this, to the side, move it back, like this. Okay, and set the cursor to the selected object. So let's add a single vertex, move it along the y-axis, extrude. Don't forget to select a vertex here, otherwise this will not work. Like this. This looks about correct length. And add some subdivisions into this. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier like this. And add a material. We'll be using a halo type material for this laser. So let's set the alpha to 1, size to 0.2, hardness maximum, add to 1, check shaded and soft, and hue 0.31, shade 0.5, and value 0.9. I guess we got a nice green. And we can press F12 to get an idea of what it looks like. As you can see, this lacks some intensity, so we'll be increasing this to maybe 4. And also we don't see the hilt yet because we don't have any lights. We'll add them a little later. But for now, let's duplicate this. Remove this material. Add another one. It will be very similar to this one. Hardness maximum, add to 1, check shaded and soft. Except now we'll be using a low alpha of 0.01 and a larger size of 0.8. So 0.3, 0.58 and 0.9. Let's take a look. All right, that's pretty good. So we've got two meshes. One is very intense in the center, and the other is more of a surrounding halo. And we will grab the larger halos and move them a little bit to the right, like this, so they don't overlap too much with the hilt. Maybe a bit more. Maybe just a bit more. Okay, that looks about right. Now let's add lights to this scene. We'll be using two lights. The first one will be a sunlight and also a hemilight. Let's move them here like this and rotate them so they point towards our lightsaber hilt. So sunlight at energy of 1 and the hemilight at 0.1. And press F12 to see the result. As you can see, we can now see the hilt because there are lights in the scene. Also, if you haven't been using a black background so far, I highly recommend it because halos will look much better over a black background. So use sky in the render settings and in world settings. Make sure all those three spaces are completely black here. Now we will be animating this lightsaber a little bit, and we can also uncheck these here for our lights and camera, so we make sure to not select it accidentally as we animate our lightsaber. So let's create an empty mesh here. And we will be parenting all three meshes to the empty, like this. So now we can rotate the empty and everything rotates with it. That will make things a lot more simple. So the first thing we'll be animating will be the activation of the lightsaber. So we'll be moving our 3D cursor a bit to the right like this. Let's move to frame 10. And set a scale keyframes for both laser meshes like this, and then move back to frame 1. Also, don't forget to set the origins of these two meshes to the 3D cursor and scale them down to 0. And add a keyframe for the scale of both laser meshes like this. I'm gonna limit this animation to maybe 160 frames for now. If we hit play, you can see we suddenly grow from nothing to a long and dangerous lightsaber. And we will also be rotating the lightsaber a bit as if Luke was handling it to fight Darth Vader or some other enemy. So let's go to frame 30. Set a rotation keyframe like this. Then frame 38. Rotate it like this. Set another keyframe. Go to frame 46. rotate, set another keyframe to frame 56 and rotate. We will also be moving the lightsaber to the right. So let's frame 46. Set a location keyframe and also let's frame 56. Move it to the right like this and set another location keyframe. And then we'll add more rotations, starting at frame 80. Rotation keyframe, then 88. Set a keyframe, 98. Rotation keyframe, and one last at frame 118. And rotation keyframe. Let's take a look. Activation, rotation, translation. Like this. Let's go into the graphic editor. Select everything, and we'll be using easier as interpolation mode. So this looks smoother. That looks pretty good like this. Also, if we go to frame 1 and hit render, we can see some halos here, which is not right. Lightsaber is not supposed to be active here. So let's go into our laser materials at frame 2. Set an alpha keyframe, then frame 1, alpha 0, add keyframe for both, like this. And then if we hit F12 and render, as you can see, it is totally inactive at frame 1, which is what we want. We can also add a sound effect file to make this lightsaber sound even more realistic. So let's go into the video sequence editor, and we'll be adding a sound. Let's pick a lightsaber one, like this. Now we can listen to it. So we can see that the swooshes and the sound effects pretty much correspond to the movements of the lightsaber. So that's pretty good. Now, to make sure we will be hearing this sound effect in the final render, we need to go to render settings and select a file format that supports adding sound effects. So we'll be picking FFmpeg video, select RGB, and add an encoder. We'll be picking MP3. Another good habit to take is to pack your files into your Blender file. So if you ever want to copy this file to another computer, all the images and sound files will be traveling with it, so that makes things a lot easier. And to conclude, let's look at a video of the final render of this lightsaber that I've placed here, this activation and the rotation, the sound effects. Well, this concludes our Blender tutorial of a lightsaber. If you're interested in watching more Blender 3D modeling tutorials, please visit my YouTube channel. And until then, happy modeling, everyone.